Hi, welcome to the small shed. Today I'm starting a new model railway layout. See you in a minute. Now hopefully this won't be too geeky. It's not as bad as it sounds, I don't think. There's an awful lot of aspects of a new layout in both in planning, building, electronics, laser cut baseboards, all sorts of things like that that are nothing really to do with model railways. They're just general subjects of interest, I would hope. I'm going to start off this morning with just a quick look on planning the layout and how that applies also in the wider world. I've touched on it in the past roughly, briefly, about planning with models and that sort of thing, and in this instance I'm just going to be building a model of a model so that I can get some concept of how it will all look. Now I'm just cutting up a bit of this foam core. I use it a lot for making models, and the first sort of non-model railway related thing I would say is that I have mentioned before about making models or layout plans. It really is good in that a lot of people can't visualize what something will end up like from a 2D plan, and so therefore if you can present them with something that's in 3D, albeit smaller, they can get some idea of what they're in for. I probably mentioned before we had the possibility of moving our men in sheds shed the other month, and that prompted us to go and do a site visit down at a new unit in Bromsgrove, which didn't in the end come to anything, but just as a way of looking at how it would all work, I did the same thing. I built a model like this out of foam core, and it just helped folks understand what we've got and how we could set things up and how we could fit machines in various different places. And I'll probably do the same with the mezzanine floor that we're putting in once we get the go-ahead down at the shed we're in at the moment, just so that people can visualise and see where things will go and how it will all fit together. So why do I want a new layout? Well, the existing layout I've got, it's only 8 foot long. That's about all the room I've got in the house to be able to set up and work on a thing that size, and the same in the shed itself. And whilst you can work in modules on layouts, it does become a problem unless you can put at least 2 of them together to get the joints right. And the layout I've got now, it takes up all of the car I've got to take it anywhere, and worst of all, it takes 2 hours roughly to put it up and 2 hours to take it down again. I wanted something, now I'm getting on in years, that I could just literally pick up at the end of an exhibition, load in the car and walk away with. And these layouts are sort of called cameo layouts. It's normally just a box with the layout inside it with an open front panel. All the lighting's in there, all the electrics are all wired in permanently, so effectively you just plug it in, use it and walk away. Just want to have a look at this conflict. Again, I've mentioned before, space, room and everything else, and how it applies specifically in this instance. So let's just have a look at some different scales of locos and things. Now essentially there are lots of different sizes of railways, but if you start with the smallest, generally accepted, easy stuff to get for British outline, we're looking at N gauge. You can go smaller than that, but N gauge is probably the most accepted small one. Briefly in the 60s I had a flirtation with TT, which always seemed to me ideal, but the size and concept of it was way ahead of the technically available motors and things, so it never really caught on, although to my mind it's still probably the best compromise of all. There's 00, which is the stuff that most folks use, and there is stuff I use which is O gauge, which is loosely speaking twice 00. Just to take an example of a station, and we'll work on probably the most extreme, which is Gloucester in the UK. The platform length of Gloucester is 602 metres, so even if you modelled it in that scale, you're looking at a platform length of about 6 metres. If you're modelling it in O gauge, you're looking at a platform length of 15 metres, and that's just the station. Now I know that's the biggest station length, platform length in the country, but if we moved on to Droitwich, you get 6 cars on our platform like that. So even in O gauge, the platforms would be about 9 foot, yeah, 2.5 metres long, which is the length of this shed. And the answer is to go smaller all the while, but I don't fancy modelling in that. A, I can't see it, and B, it just hasn't got quite such a satisfying heft to it as the O gauge stuff. So that's why I've come up with what I've found locally, which is the shortest branch line in Great Britain, probably in Europe, and it's also got the shortest platform length, pretty much, I think. But I'm just going to show you what I've been up to with regards to this cardboard model we've been making. So the normal way to get over this conflict with length is to compress the whole station down, and to some extent that's successful. If you've got enough room, you can probably halve the length of a platform without it becoming apparent that there's a major problem with it, and you just run shorter trains. I've found a solution down at Stourbridge Town, which is about 6-7 miles away from here, where there exists a platform which is exactly that size. This has not been compressed in any way, shape or form. It's a slightly strange station. It only runs down 0.8 of a mile from the next station on the main line. It's a little branch that drops down into Stourbridge, and it probably should have been shut years ago by beaching. But it still exists today. It's been upgraded with a new building. This old steam type locomotive never actually ran into this station. There used to be a much bigger station at Stourbridge Town, but for the purposes of this, that gives you a pretty good idea of how small it is. There is literally only room for one coach in there. What that means is, because it exists, because it's right on my doorstep, and because it's small, it means I can model this whole thing exactly to scale, which is something you very, very rarely ever get, in about 5 foot. This is a footway that goes on to the end where it's only a single line. Stuff comes in, stuff goes out, which means I can automate it with a shuttle, putting different trains on. And what I want to do is to make it tell a story of the history of the line, the history of the locomotives that have run in and out of there, some sort of narrative, and maybe a video presentation running as well. And there's one other thing which I'll come on to another day, and that is the peculiarity of the service that's being run now. It is something that's totally unique to the country. They're running a machine there which is totally different to anything else anywhere in the country, and indeed probably anywhere else in the world. What it does do is, for the first time ever, gives me the opportunity to model something exactly right, and that's not something you normally get to do. I've already spent many weeks out there picking up all of the details, measuring the whole building, so that it can be made brick accurate, and indeed track accurate, in that it's got wooden sleepers all the way down it, but there are about half a dozen concrete sleepers that appear within the track where they've repaired it. It means I can do exactly that sort of thing and make it absolutely spot on. Bit nerdy, I know, but really I think that's where the interest for me will be. So that's the station, that's the project. I've started to gather some of the things that ran on this line, specific numbers, specific locos, specific types of loco, and I'm pretty much there with the history of the line back to its beginnings in the 1800s. So there we have it. This was Stourbridge Town 1. It will drop in and out over the next months. Every now and again I'll drop in with something that hopefully will be of interest to you. The last quick layout I built is the one that I'm running around with at the moment to exhibitions. That was meant to be a quick build and it took 3 years. I'm hoping this one won't take that long, but let's say essentially it's not the story of building a layout, it's the story of components and how I build those. We'll drop in and out every now and again when I think I've got something to show you, and visit the layout as it develops further on in the future. Hope you enjoyed the video. Look forward to seeing you next week, and we'll hopefully have something different then. I'll see you then. Bye.